Where are we?
This is Mark McNeese in New York City, and you're listening to Aged Perfection, where age is embraced and life is celebrated. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is Mark, and my guest tonight is author Heather Stanliaus, who is more than, well, an author is plenty to be, but she's lots more than an author. And Heather, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We were just talking a little bit beforehand that we're both in, well, you live in Jersey, but you work in New York City. Because I always ask people, what time zone are you in? And then I realized we're in the same time zone.
Yes, we are.
Which is nice. Now, I found out about your book actually through my friend Cindy Krieger, who I believe has done some promotional stuff for you. Is that the case, Krieger Cole Communications?
Yes, I'm working with Krieger Cole Communications, both Cindy and Rainey, who've been helping me out with some of the public relations efforts and initiatives for the book. So it's been a pleasure to work with both of them, and I'm glad that they mentioned me to you.
Yes, they're friends of mine, friends of ours, my partner and I. I've known Cindy for about 12 years or so when she worked at GLAAD. But I want to talk about your book. It is The Evolution of Her, Redefining Your Beliefs About Your Feminine Identity. Let's start by what got you to write the book? I know that you spent over 10 years practicing yoga and meditation. And what was the journey to write the book?
Sure. So maybe I'll just share a little bit about what the book is about and then what inspired me to write the book. So
Sure.
The book is a personal, practical empowerment guide for women that imparts to women how we can live in alignment with our own definition of fulfillment and how we really can define our beliefs about ourselves against the backdrop of the modern age without giving up on our dreams of finding a partner and having children. Mm-hmm. So I believe from my personal perspective and my personal life and just talking with other women that there are many paths that we can follow if we move beyond the expectations of who we think we need to be. And so the inspiration from my book really came as a young woman. I believed that my life needed to follow a prescriptive life plan, that I had to be married, that I had to have kids, and all of that had to happen by a certain age in order for me to be happy. And when that didn't happen in the time frame that I planned for myself, I experienced a lot of self-doubt, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of fear. And as I talked to more and more women, I found out that those feelings that I was experiencing wasn't isolated, but it was an issue that was universal to all women. At some point, women have faced their beliefs about who they should be as a woman, which I've coined the feminine identity, whether they are single or married or a mother. There's always these expectations of who we should be, and so it's a struggle in terms of balancing those expectations and the desire to live our own lives. And so I really wanted to share a new and refreshing perspective on how we can think about our lives.
Well, when I was reading it, those are the things that struck me that I really liked. My sister, who is now in her 60s, mm-hmm. she knew or decided early in her life that she did not want children. Mm-hmm. So she had a tubal ligation. And I've known a number of couples who have decided that they wanted their lives with just themselves. But our culture is very sort of dismissive and judgmental of that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really liked when I was reading what you wrote, that there is a huge pressure on women to get married and to have children. And it seems like it's a tough tide to go against.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you speak to most women, at some point in their lives, they face this challenge and, or the struggle, I should say. And it doesn't just stop with, a woman who's single and the expectation of her is to get married and then have kids, and then once women get married, then everyone's pressuring them, when are you going to have kids? And then, once they have kids, then there's the struggle about, being an effective mother and working full time in our society, which is almost necessary at this point. And so there's always these expectations, and you bring up the great point of the expectations of having kids. I personally know many women who aren't sure if they want to have kids, but it's this expectation and pressure that you have to have kids in order to be happy. And if you don't, I feel like a lot of women feel that they're shamefully stripped of their feminine identity. And, it's really not fair, but, one of the things that I talk about in the book is that we have to own our own lives and we have to live in our own truth. And there's always going to be those expectations out there. People are always going to tell us who we need to be, what we need to have in our lives to be happy. But when we're able to get underneath our thinking, to the origination of our thoughts, and really explore who we are, I think that the outcome of that is that we really find out who we are, what we want, and what's going to make us happy, and the influence of other people's judgments are less impactful to us at that particular point.
Now, what do you think, or what would you suggest for women who are under a lot of cultural pressure? I mean, it's one thing to be able to, it's great to be able to sort of understand your identity and form your identity and make choices about who you want to be. But what about women who, for instance, have families pressuring them and siblings pressuring them, and how do you get around, how do you sort of go against that and not surrender?
Right. So, and I know firsthand, right? A lot of the pressure that I experienced as a young woman really it came from the external pressures that, from society, from seeing other people, my friends, get married and move on with their lives, the pressure from my family, always being questioned, often to the point of harassed. When you're going to get married, when you're going to have kids. And so that pressure is real. So I wouldn't deny that. For me personally, I think how I overcame that pressure and have started to live my life on my own terms is understanding a few things. So one is, I think that the advice that I would give women is you really have to understand your beliefs about who you are. So you have to continuously ask yourself questions about, why do I want certain things? And keep on asking yourself why until you get to the real answer, because many times we want things for the wrong reasons. So for me personally, when I asked myself that question, what I found out was that I wanted to get married and I wanted to have children to be accepted, and to project to the world that I was a whole woman and that I was a worthy woman. And so I haven't diminished my desire at this point to get married and have kids, but I realized that I wanted it for very selfish reasons, and I wanted it for very superficial reasons. So once I was able to get underneath my thinking, then I was able to explore what it is I really wanted. And then one of the other things that, I found out that was key and that I talk about in the book is that I think that we all need to understand that people project their beliefs and their dreams onto us. So if my sister, for instance, is married and has kids, that's what she wants for me because that's what makes her happy, so she assumes that's going to make me happy. But it's not necessarily true. So when I'm able to isolate this group thinking and what others think and really get to what it is I want in my life, I think that I've become more immune to what other people want from me. So I think that's really key, is understanding your beliefs. And in order to do that, you have to have a practice, I believe, of introspection. And that can take many shapes and forms. I think that a lot of times people think of introspection as, meditating for hours a day. And it's not necessarily the case. I think that you can develop introspective practices such as meditation. That's always great. I try to meditate on a daily basis. But there's other things that you can do to really find out who you are, such as doing the things and engaging in the things that you love. I believe surrounding yourself with people who are different than you, who will show you different aspects of who you are. Even therapy, I think, is a good form of introspection. And so I think that when you really understand and come to peace with who you are, then others' judgments and others' pressures are less impactful.
I think that's very true. And another thing that resonated with me when I was
Mhm.
reading your book was I could relate it to what's going on with marriage equality for gay and lesbian
Absolutely.
couples, because marriage has become. I mean, it's great to have marriage equality. I certainly think everyone should have the right to marry.
Mhm. Mhm.
But now I can see it coming where, of course, I'm married, by the way. I married
Mhm.
my husband in August a year and a half ago.
Oh,
But
congratulations.
thank you. But I know it's not for everybody. And I can
Mhm.
now see now, gay people, we get to have our parents pressuring us to get married too now. And when are you going to give me grandchildren? And there's this whole, I see it developing, this sort of assumption that marriage is what you have to do and marriage is what
Mhm.
you need to do. It's become, I don't want to say mainstream, but I hope I'm making sense.
No,
It's
you're
like
absolutely making sense.
now that we can get married, we're sort of taking those expectations on ourselves, and
Mhm.
I don't know that it's necessarily a good thing. I do know quite a few couples who aren't getting married and don't want to get married,
Mhm.
but it's especially for younger folks. I think they're probably going to experience a lot more of that, and I would say what you say in your book, which is make sure you know who you are and that you're not doing these things because that's what we're supposed to do now. We're supposed to find a mate and get married and either have children through in vitro or surrogacy or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at just a society as a whole, marriage is certainly a custom that's universal in all religions, in all customs, um, in all ethnicities and cultures. And so there's this notion or the expectation that you have to follow this life plan. And I believe that it can come at different times in people's lives. It doesn't necessarily have to come at all. And we're influenced by so many other factors in our lives, and a few of the things I speak about on the book is our rituals and traditions. We're influenced by that, and the group thinking that goes into the rituals and traditions, and breaking away from that and not being accepted causes pressure to want to follow that predefined plan. In many instances, people's religious beliefs influence whether they should get married or not. Whether people want to have kids, and a long-term partner influences whether individuals want to get married. And so I think that from my perspective, and what I'd like to share in the book is that marriage isn't the enemy. Marriage can be a beautiful thing. My parents have, going this summer, will be have married 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand the beauty that can exist in a marriage, but I also think that from my perspective, people understand that you don't have to have marriage to be happy, and that marriage isn't going to bring you happiness. I think that in our society we have this notion of happily ever after, and people really believe that. And I don't think that just because you're married, you're guaranteed endless amounts of happiness and joy. Even in the best relationships, we have to work and we have to put effort into those relationships. And so I believe that you can have a spiritual partner, and that doesn't need to manifest itself in marriage. But I
Mm-hmm.
believe that if it works for you and if it's right, that's perfectly great, and you should go ahead and get married. But I think that we have to understand that we get to choose what we want in our life.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And everything is it's a sort of a hallmark reality where marriage is seen as bouquets and tears and all this joy, and it can
Mhm.
be. It can be. It
Mhm.
can also be very simple. You can just go
Mhm.
to City Hall and get married if you want
Yeah.
to. But
Absolutely.
but it is held up as an ideal,
Mhm.
and as long as folks get married for the right reasons. Um, Now I wanted to let people know your book is available
It
again.
is.
Yeah,
It's
go ahead.
available in paperback form on Amazon, and then also ebook form on Amazon Kindle, Apple iBooks, and Barnes & Noble's Nook.
And it's The Evolution of Her, Redefining Your Beliefs About Your Feminine Identity. Now, you mentioned yoga here. Do you practice yoga every day?
I try. I try. I try to get up every morning and do some yoga and meditation. Some days I'm good, some days I'm bad. But for the most part, for me, yoga is very therapeutic. And, it really helps me to have balance in my life. And so I try to, on a regular basis, do it for those reasons. And really, it's helped me become the person I am today in terms of my journey of self-discovery and figuring out who I am. And, I can look forward to doing yoga because, one of the things that I've learned is that growth and development is continuous. It's not something that stops at any point. And so I really enjoy the journey that yoga takes me on.
Now, also, you do some, you do writing. You write spiritually focused writing that seeks to uplift women. So I'm curious if you have a website or how can people find you if they want to?
Sure. Yes, I have a website. It's Heather Stanislaus, my full name, .com, and then I'm also on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is Heather L. Stanis, Stanis. So I would love to connect with people and continue the conversation, or for people to read some of my other blogs that I have out there with regards to really owning our identities.
And so folks know it's your last name is spelled Stanislaus, Stanislaus.
Yep, that is it.
You were as delightful to talk to as your writing was to read.
Thank you.
I really liked it. I liked it a lot, and I think that people will identify with a lot of what you have to say, and not just women. There's so much that you have to say about taking responsibility for our identities, I guess I would say, and determining who we are and who we want to be in the world. Yep. Because there's peace there too. That's something that I've experienced lately is sort of having an epiphany and saying, this is what I want in my life, this is not what I want in my life, because I'm going on a tangent here, but I think we create our own stresses. Most of the stresses in my life are self-generated. And when I'm willing to just have a moment of clarity and say, I don't really want to do this anymore, I don't need this in my life, I don't need that in my life, then there's also a level of peace and relaxation that comes with that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. There's definitely, there's just a lot of anxiety, worry, fears that we have, and pressures that we put on ourselves. And I think when you're able to really dig deep within yourself, I think that you realize that most of that is self-inflicted, and most of that really just exists in our heads.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily reality. And once we're able to separate that part of ourselves that worries, that has these fears, from who we truly are, there is true peace in that. And, I've recognized that in my own life. I used to be a highly stressed out person, very confused, very lost. And then when I started to dig deep, I realized that's not really who I am. That I'm really this being who should be at peace. And so I've experienced significant transformation in my own life, just getting to know myself and realizing that, I'm not my thoughts, that, I'm not my stress, I'm not my fears, I'm something greater than that.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing it with people, and I'm glad you agreed to talk to me and be on part of the Age to Perfection podcast. And I'll send you the link to this tomorrow. It's either tomorrow. Yeah, I'm pretty sure tomorrow morning I'll put it up. Certainly by Friday, and I'll send that to you. And it's been just a great conversation with you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, Heather.
All right, great. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye.